Hey, it's Joyce Conroy, host of the Block Party. It's so wonderful to be back on Ernie's Corner with Ernie Cefalu. And my friend, we're going to talk about the Bee Gees this evening.
Yeah, it's great. It's great being with you on the corner and all our great neighbors. I mean, it's really wonderful. The block is really a great place to be, and I'm so proud to be here and happy. And yeah, the Bee Gees, pretty incredible. I was a huge fan of theirs when I was in college, and I had submitted some stuff to a printing press that was printing posters for the Revolution and head shops and stuff. And we had a Bee Gees project. I was a senior in college, and I submitted some stuff. It didn't get bought, but as I told Joyce earlier, a few years later, I'm actually working with them again, like other things that have happened in my life. And people have said, well, how do you remember so much? And it's because it was my life. I lived it, and it comes in a chronological order. The way we've been talking about these things, everything sort of goes back to the way it started. With the Bee Gees, I was a fan. I submitted some stuff. It didn't get accepted. Years later, I'm working on Jesus Christ Superstar, right? So at Norman Levit, I designed the Jesus Christ Superstar album and all the merchandise and stuff. And then I moved to a company that just did album covers, Craig Braun, and that's where I did the Rolling Stones logo and stuff. And when I was working on those things, I was reached out to by Robert Stigwood, who was now the manager of the Bee Gees. And I had worked with him a few years earlier, actually a couple years earlier, on the Jesus Christ Superstar stage play, because he's the one that took the Jesus Christ Superstar and put it a theatrical production that toured. So Robert Stig was doing that. And I worked with him because I had done the album cover. At the agency I worked at, he reached out to me and I freelanced with him on the stage production. I did all the librettos and all the stuff for when you go to see the thing. And there's an interesting story about that too, because the first libretto I created, they gave me all this photography to put into a piece, and I did. And we went all the way to finished mechanicals and stuff. And I gave more importance to some of the minor stars because I didn't know who they were. And so we had to redo it. And I've got that one too. It's like having a coin that's only one of them was made. It was a mistake, and you've got it. It's really unique. That's part of what I have for the Jesus Christ Superstar stuff. But Robert and I got along really, really well. A few years go by, I didn't hear anything more from him, and I get a call from him one day, and he said, I'm working with a group, and they need a logo. I want a logo for them that really reflects who they are and their music. And I think you're the guy that should do this. I loved working with you on the stage production. And I know it's been a couple of years, but you've been busy. I've been busy. I've been following Pacific Ioneer because at this time I'm now working at Pacific Ioneer. And so he said to me, I'm managing this group and I want a logo for them. And you're the guy to do it. It's the Bee Gees. And they have a disco album that they're coming out with. And this is like 1975, okay? And again, I hadn't heard from him in a couple of years, but he did very well with the stage production of Jesus Christ Superstar. So he got me involved. He sent us some cassettes with some of the music from Main Course. And of course, I'm already a fan anyway. So I created this lettering that you see behind me. One of the big things that I always contributed to was the logo design, the corporate identity design, the lettering. The lettering was something that I hated when I was in high school and junior high school and even in college. But when I got into New York and I started working in records, doing album covers, I started getting into lettering. Matthew Southern Comfort. I've got all these logos that I did early on that got me into being so sensitive. Something that I hated so much became something that was really, really easy for me. So this logo behind me has become really pretty as famous as the Rolling Stones tongue or the Jesus Christ Superstar Angels for me, and so I did that logo. And then Drew Struzan was one of the illustrators at Pacific Ioneer, and he got involved with creating the girl in the spoon that you see here. And then we together put together the lettering with the girl in the spoon, and Drew did this background behind the lettering and stuff. It's this pattern that he created one piece of, and then we just glued up a big section of it and shot it. And we did a lot of really crazy stuff like that. And then the back cover, over here. We took the same girl in the spoon and we put her down at the bottom, and Drew created some more ribbon work that went around the back, and then we put all the credits on the inside of it. It was really, again, working with them for me was like all these other groups that were just like, I was a huge fan, and I only met Maurice once, and that was on a phone call with Robert Stigwood, and he was with him, and so we talked a little bit. But they really loved the logo. They still use it to this day on a lot of their stuff, and I'm very blessed to be able to have been part of that. And they were the main course album did very, very well for them. It was one of their bigger albums, and disco was still going crazy, and Donna Summers and people like that were John Travolta with Grease, and then the other thing he did with the disco, I forget what was the name of that Travolta.
Saturday Night Fever.
Saturday Night Fever, right? Exactly, yeah. And so this was right around that same time, and it really became a big thing for them. And I was again very, very lucky to be in the same place that they were and doing stuff that they liked, because Robert had talked to them about Pacific Pioneer, and there was no internet or anything in those days. So he said he brought in some albums. They were in the studio, and he brought in some albums that Pacific Pioneer had done. And we had, by this time, by 1975, Pacific Pioneer was probably one of the top 3 companies in the album cover design business. Now, there was only 3 companies in the business, but we were in the top 3. No, there was a few more than that, but we were the ones that people were following, people were noticing. And I think a lot of that was because, and Joyce, you and I talked about that, about how people want to feel part of what it is that you're doing. They want to be more involved than taking a record out of a sleeve and putting it on a record player and looking at the liner notes or the pictures. We wanted to get them even more involved, and that was one of the things that you look over a lot of the album covers that I've done. A lot of them were like that, when groups were able to spend 25 and 30 cents for an album, but the record company was used to paying 5 or 6 cents, and that makes a big difference. And then by '84, all that changed, because what happened was groups that they had given that power to would spend 25 cents on an album and sell 4 albums. So the record company would really, so by 1984, they had taken all those things back from the existing acts and new acts that they signed. But they were doing it at the time to, get a lot of groups. Everybody in the 70s, all these record companies were fighting over signing just about anybody. They just needed to build their labels. And LA was the perfect place, with places like the Troubadour and the Whiskey was the perfect place to make that happen. And then, of course, just like New York, where as an ad guy, that's where I want to go to be successful. As an actor, as whatever musician, you want to come to LA. That's where it's happening. So, and the record companies were here too. So it was like a perfect storm, And so, there's bigger stories to the Bee Gees, but I think this is pretty much a good part of it. There'll be more later. We'll do it again. And, for the songs, again, I can never narrow it down to one, Joyce. I'm really sorry. I've always put you on the line here. But for me, on the main course album, it was Jive Talkin' and Nights on Broadway. Those 2 songs. It's up to you to play which one you want, or both.
They're good ones. I remember hearing Jive Talking on the radio and thinking, is that the Bee Gees?
Yeah.
I got to get a message to you, because I was always used to hearing that and words. And I'm thinking, this is a really great sound. And that main course LP really started it for them when they were doing the transition in the mid-'70s, and then on to Saturday Night Fever and the work that they did.
Sure. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. And my only regret is I wish I would have been able to meet them, in person, because I was a huge fan, and I always liked their music. But you're right, that main course album, when it happened, and Robert Stigwood was, I tell you, that guy was a genius. He really was. I mean, I think he's still alive, but I haven't talked to him in years. But he was brilliant. He was like Shep Gordon. They're brilliant. They just knew how to make it work. When some people were sort of flying by the seat of their pants or whatever, they knew how to do it. They knew what to do. Shep knew how to take negative stuff and turn it into positive stuff. And he always tells that story about when he first went to see Alice perform, and there were like a couple hundred people in the theater. And when Alice came out and started playing, 199 got up and walked out. He was the only one left there, and he sat there and watched the whole thing. He said, "This group is amazing. The messaging is wrong. You just need to take it and rebuild it." And that's when it happened. I mean, Shep, like Robert Stigwood, had a real finger on the pulse. I mean, there were a lot of Ahmet Erdogan, Joe Smith. A lot of these guys really knew what was going on. Lou Adler, another one with Ode Records. I mean, pretty amazing. And it's been an incredible career for me, and I look forward to next week. I'll still be right here on the corner. If you guys want to come out anytime and we can talk, I'm always around on Facebook.
Yes, we're so glad to have you. Lots of positive feedback, and I laugh at how so many times we are on the same radar. Now, you know, it's funny with the Main Course album, I started listening to it, and I actually love when the harmony between Barry Gibb and Robin had such an emotion when he sang. So I'm a bad girl. I like Come On Over, too, and I know Olivia Newton-John did it, as well.
But no, what a great song to play, especially with her passing. I mean, she was another one. I mean, in Greece, she surprised the hell out of everybody, and she was great. I mean, I loved a lot of her singing. It's like, Helen Reddy and Anne Murray. We did a couple projects for Anne Murray. She was great. I mean, I'd love to sometime talk about her. I mean, she was, and her husband, who was manager, and she was a huge fan of Pacific Pioneer. And like Mary Travers, I mean, the weirdest acts were huge fans of Pacific Pioneer. I mean, it's just, it was an amazing time, Joyce, and by you allowing me to be on the block with you, really brings back a lot of those memories, a lot of those stories, and we got plenty of them,
We think the world of you, Ernie. Well, I will make a deal with you. I'm going to include your choices and one of mine. How about that?
All right. Oh, that's awesome. That would be awesome. Thank you so much.